Hi, I'm Nadia.
Hi, I'm Aaleia.
Hi, I'm Nameera. And this is Operation Tomatometer.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Operation Tomatometer, the classic's most tomaterific film podcast. Before we jump into today's episode, we have a very special guest, Jenny.
Yay! So Jenny, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, thank you for having me, first of all. I've been interested in film since I joined film club with Nadia and Aaleia freshman year, and I've also really enjoyed watching animatics since middle school, and that kind of introduced me into like the world of film. And this was actually my first Michael Bay movie, so I had a lot of fun watching it.
Thank you, Jenny. So now we're going to get started. Nameera, take it away.
Alright, so, not to be on the nose, but if you haven't been in an ambulance,
Okay,
then you know
very on the nose.
then you know about Universal's latest film, Ambulance.
This one is especially exciting as we have our two very special people here, Aaleia and Jenny, attend a very exclusive pre-screening of the film. The film does arrive in theaters, US, Friday the 18th. Not 18th, 8th, sorry, my bad.
So Ambulance is actually a remake of the 2005 Danish film of the same name, and it is directed, as Jenny said, by Michael Bay, who was known for a lot of explosions and a lot of lens flare and crazy stuff. In a lot of his films, he did Transformers. So it follows Will Sharp, who is an ex-Marine desperate for money for his wife's surgery, and resigned yet also reluctant. He goes along with his adopted brother Daniel's plan to steal $32 million from an LA bank. But the plan soon goes south when they hijack an ambulance that's carrying a dying police officer named Zach and a paramedic named Cam, who is trying to save his life. And it follows basically an entire ambulance chase and a helicopter chase, and a lot of crazy stuff happens in the film. And a lot of stuff happens that I'm probably forgetting because it was very incredibly fast-paced.
Wow, it's very interesting. Before we head into anything else, just a forewarning that Aaleia and Jenny were the only ones to have seen this film, as it was an exclusive screening. So we're gonna take a different approach where we get to, pick your brains a little bit about what you liked about it. So now into our favorite segment, Rana or Not, where we, or rather Aaleia and Jenny, will try to guess what the score was for this film. So Jenny, you can start us off. What were your thoughts?
After watching the movie, I feel like critics probably wouldn't like it as much as I personally enjoyed it. Based off what I know of his previous film, Transformers, I know that critics did not enjoy that as much. So probably I would say critics score around 80%.
I think it's going to be a little lower than that, just because, people wouldn't have thought it was a very cohesive film overall. It was really good for an action film, but if we're talking about critics who are used to the more modern storytelling techniques, I think it would have been lower, so maybe around a 70. Personally, I wouldn't give it a 70. Maybe lowest is 75. But there was definitely a lot to it that I really enjoyed. It was sort of absurd in a way, in just everything about it. It's like, this wouldn't really happen in real life, but they were also trying to make it overtly realistic as well, and I did like that. And it was sort of a throwback to other films, especially like Speed, which was 1994-ish, which was also a Michael Bay film. And I think people would have liked that little throwback, but then again, a lot of critics are also younger, so let's say something in the middle, around a 70. Do you guys have any thoughts about what the critic score might be, even though you guys didn't see the film?
Based off the trailer, because that's what I legally have seen. That's all I've seen in the film. And based off the trailer, I know trailers are generally very fast-paced because they're editing it all so closely together. But the premise did seem interesting, and I do like those films that kind of track a kind of one setting. Those kinds of scenarios are really cool. In real life, they're terrible, but as a film, I like it when it's just set in one location. So if the majority of the film followed the ambulance, I think that's really an interesting way of telling a story. So I would say maybe I'd stick with you guys. Maybe I'll go 78, between 75, 80, something like that.
I say 70.
Oh, well, okay, then I'll go 75.
No, I kind of feel the same. Just speaking on like Michael Bay's past, you know, he's known for going over the top and whatnot, and sometimes critics aren't as receptive as Jenny was saying. But that doesn't mean that the audience won't be as receptive, you know? So I'm kind of also in that middle ground of 75 to maybe like, I'd say 76 even.
So now will our lovely producer give us the critic score? Okay. Let's see. 72!
Okay.
That's pretty good, I think. Maybe a little lower than some of the better films that we've seen on the podcast.
But also higher than some of the other stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Jinx. We always bring up the term.
We have to.
Because I hate it. Sorry.
Slander. Alrighty, so we all agree, I assume, because we're all super close. But I would like to hear Jenny and Aaleia what you guys think.
I mean, I sort of agree with this rating. I'd give it a little higher. Actually, in the vlog that we did, I mentioned right after the film that this is something that my mom would hate because she hates these action films. But my dad would love it because this is exactly the kind of stuff that he likes. Like, he probably loved Transformers. Probably. So you have to be a certain type of person, I think, to really appreciate it. But this is also something that everyone could appreciate. Just for the storyline and everything, and they did try to modernize it a little bit. I did like the claustrophobic aspects of it, which was one of the things that they were going for when they initially conceived of the film in like 2015, I think, is that they wanted it to be something that felt so claustrophobic, like Speed, but I think Speed also had scenes that were outside of the bus.
Yeah.
And this was like that as well, where it opened very open to the world, and then it gets really claustrophobic as eventually the viewer is taken inside of the ambulance, and then after that it just sort of cuts back and forth between the ambulance and everything else.
So what would you guys think would be the audience score for Ambulance?
Oh yeah, since audiences haven't had a chance to rate it yet, I guess we're just sort of shooting in the dark here.
You'll be the first audience
First audience. I mean, I'm sure people have reviewed it already. I think it's going to be higher than this, because again, there's going to be a lot of people who like the throwback aspects of it, and who like the action scenes, and how you come out of it and you're sort of like shaking and wobbling, and it has almost, I think Jenny said it was like almost like a 4D experience in the theater, like the seats are shaking and there's booming all around you. Could also be that we were sitting right in the front. So I think like an 80, if it's a 72, maybe like an 80 for audience. I guess we'll see when it comes out. Jenny, what do you think?
Probably like around 80, but also like maybe a little higher, because I feel like this is definitely something audiences would like more, especially like the emotional aspects of the movie. I feel like that would hit harder for the audiences, and yeah, I think probably around 85% maybe.
Take that score, take away 50 points for having Jake Gyllenhaal. Anyways. No, just joking. But you know, the recent Jake Gyllenhaal drama with Taylor Swift, that's something that was on my mind, and I was like, oh wow, look at that.
Me too, honestly, so I have to agree with Nameera here. Dock is 50 points. Aside from the audience score, the critic score, do you guys want to delve further into your thoughts?
Well, immediately what I think is that the first reviews that came out, like Entertainment Weekly, I think from the trailers, said that it was pure chaos. And after watching the film, that is an accurate way of describing it. It was absolutely chaotic. In most of the film, the camera never stopped moving. It never stopped moving. There were these crazy, wild panning scenes, flying shots, helicopters. There were shots going through, explosions and stuff.
Wow.
And it was just this absolutely wild cinematography that I feel so bad that you guys didn't get to see it.
The image I have in my head now, I don't think it's anything like what you're actually talking about. I'm just imagining pure chaos, so maybe that's
like
exactly
camera
what it was.
flying around. Just imagine a drone flying around. It's that's what this film is. There were some really good shots too. Like one of my favorites is when the camera seemed to jump off a building. There was no apparent purpose to this, by the way. There was no purpose to having the camera jump off a building. It was just completely random. Imagine you were diving headfirst off of a really tall building. That's what the camera did. And then it flies upside down and it does some loop-de-loops and stuff. So that's
so Batman, but like
Batman.
Flies.
The camera is Batman.
Ah.
Any other major points that stuck out to you?
This isn't exactly a major point, but I noticed how none of the cops in the movie are good drivers.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
In every single chase scene, Like, you have this giant ambulance barreling down streets, and yet not a single cop car was able to, like, stop them. And then it had, like, hordes of cop cars just surrounding the ambulance, and yet the main characters were able to escape. I feel like that's just part of the genre, though. Like,
Right.
having
Yeah.
everyone, like, be weaker than the main character.
It's kind of like the stormtroopers in Star Wars.
Yeah,
How
like,
they
they're so
always
bad.
miss.
So on the scale of like, well, this is more for Aaleia and you, from like the first Fast and Furious to the one now that they're in space, where is this movie kind of in? Is it more like middle? Is it going towards the space, going out of this world?
Is that where Fast and Furious is going?
I think
Is
so,
that where they're
actually.
going?
I think they did already.
It's like Marvel, but getting more involved. Well, I guess Jenny sort of touched on it, that there was this absurdity to the film. I think that it was pretty down to earth. It was trying to be realistic. Like, I think maybe
No
that's
pun
what was
intended.
happening. Maybe that's what was happening with all the panning and everything, that it was trying to make it seem like you were actually right there in the film. Like, it was all shaky cam, and by shaky cam, I mean wild shaking. Like,
Oh my God.
like they were literally
The
doing
cameraman was just like absolutely smashing that
I
camera.
think so. That sort of also reflects Michael Bay's directing style. I think he likes to call it the immediate energy that it brings to a shot, where he's not sitting in a director's chair. He doesn't have a video village, I think it's called, where it has like all the shots lined up on computers and whatever. He's like right there with everyone as it's happening, which makes sense because, you know, he loves explosions. So that did really come through with it, but it wasn't so outer space crazy. It was down to earth crazy. Like, this is something that might actually happen, even if it was more of an exaggeration on. Well, it's getting more thematic, but like poverty and also just human desperation. Like, that's what I got from watching it, was the exploration of human nature. Maybe also the critique of apathy that we have. Like, there was this thing about the healthcare system, and how he was a veteran trying to get money for his wife, and that's sort of what drove his desperation toward, you know, robbing a bank. And maybe that's like a huge exaggeration, but maybe that is some more political context getting into it, but also showing that, like with Don't Look Up, that it shouldn't be political. And that's also something that a lot of films are going for nowadays, something that's not overtly political, but it gives a little nudge toward the younger generation, maybe.
That's a really interesting point. And you get a taste of that in the trailer, as I mentioned again. That's what I can comment on. I did see some commentary in that. I think there was something about him trying to get money for his wife. Which, yeah, like you said, it's terrible that, you know, like in our healthcare, we have to pay like you have to pay just for an ambulance coming to get you. So often a lot of people they take themselves to the hospital, which is terrible.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate when movies give like those subtle messages about life that applies to all of us. What do you think, Jenny? Anything like strike you like thematically?
Diving a little deeper into one of the characters, so the paramedic, Cam, so she kind of reflected what Aaleia was saying about the healthcare industry, and how sometimes, you know, people are driven to do these outrageous things because they are unable to find help. And Cam's storyline is about her finally being able to emotionally connect with her patients and going the extra mile to take care of them.
What? Wait, I haven't. Okay.
Did you not get that? I mean, that's how I felt when I was watching it.
That's an interesting point. Like, I didn't really get that at all from her
There's a
character.
disagreement.
Like,
Ooh.
emotional maybe I'm just not good with that sort of stuff. But
That brings up like an interesting point of like, what did you guys think about the character development and like the substance with these characters?
Cam was interesting. Like, I definitely felt like Will and Danny were developed well, and that Danny was this sort of just human nature completely driven by greed and everything, and he really didn't do anything to fight against death or anything, but then Will, the whole time, his entire life, was fighting against all of that and being a veteran and fighting everything that was bad in the world, and he was sort of coming to that realization that he's not the bad guy, even though he is desperate, so he was in conflict the whole time. And then Cam was also like that, where she was trying to save everyone, and she was trying to save everyone's lives, and she was this heroic character as well. But I didn't really get that emotional disconnection from her at the beginning. Maybe when she was when she was leaving the hospital with Lindsay. We need to talk about Lindsay.
Yes, Lindsay. So Lindsay was this little girl. So in the beginning, Cam is introduced by this like car accident. So Lindsay's like this little girl involved in the car accident, and her parents, her mom, drove into like a gate. It's kind of unnecessary details, but it was pretty traumatic, and it was pretty graphic, right?
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So Cam was at the scene, and I guess it was just to show like the audience, like to shock them into like caring for this little girl, even though she only shows up for like a couple of minutes in the beginning of the film.
Right. And how do you guys feel about the score of the movie?
Oh. Okay.
That's something I'm always interested in. You
Yeah,
gotta know.
we have to talk about it.
So the score is usually one of the things that I find to be most important in a film. It opened, and I was like, what is it doing? Because it was this crazy, like, sentimental, dramatic track, and everything that was happening wasn't so dramatic. And the entire, like, first half of the film, I'm sorry, I like, maybe I'm critiquing this too much, but it was overly dramatic and like, overly sentimental, this track. I don't know if you guys have listened to it, but it's the only parts that I really, really loved were during the action sequences. Like, there were parts where I was like, this needs, I want EDM playing right now, and then like these dramatic build-ups would happen, and it's like, never mind, I don't need that. This is like the most epic soundtrack. I think I mentioned this, and I think Jenny disagreed with me about the score, that it wasn't overly dramatic, but I thought in the beginning it definitely was, and it felt really weird, especially with the comedy they tried to sprinkle in through it.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, sometimes the comedic aspects of the movie kind of took you out of like actually viewing it, so I guess it just broke your immersion of the movie. And while I did enjoy it, like I laughed at some parts, it still felt a little off. Like they could have done a better job.
Alright. Any other thoughts?
Well, also with Lindsay, that was actually something that I know Jenny's got me thinking about. Where I actually didn't think her character was that important. I thought it was more just to show that Cam was, intent on saving lives. But now maybe her character was there to show how she changed over time, that she wanted to become more connected to her work, because at the end, it was the scene I was kind of confused about, where she leaves Will and she goes back to find Lindsay in the hospital, and she holds her hand and Lindsay says something like, "Don't let go," or something, and I was like, that's a stupid line to end on. Like,
that's how it ended?
And then she walks outside and it's all dramatic and there's lights around her and she's looking up into the sky, and then there's a huge dramatic build up in the music and we're waiting for something important to happen.
What?
And then there's a cityscape of LA. And this is like directed by Michael Bay.
No. Leah's getting very passionate.
The build up never came. There was no crescendo in the music. I was so sad. I was waiting for it.
Oh.
But yeah, anyway.
Michael Bay, doing it all.
Yeah.
Wow.
All and nothing.
All. Give us nothing, King.
So overall, it was a good film. I mean, now that we've talked about it a little bit, there's a lot of thematic elements that were really good, especially for something that's a remake that you usually don't get a lot of. It was a really fun film. It was definitely action-packed, and it was something that I think a lot of people are going to want to go to theaters and see just to get that thrill from it. The action sequences were amazing. The cinematography was crazy. Every scene was from a different angle. It was absolutely insane. Nadia's going to have to see this, and she's going to be raving about it for months. Any last thoughts?
It was very engaging, and since it's my first action film, I don't really know much about the genre to like have a really good analysis or criticism of it, but it was fun. Yeah, I recommend it.
So I think that wraps up today's episode. Thank you so much, Jenny, for being featured
Thank
in today's
you.
episode.
Thank you for inviting me. It's really fun.
Make sure to stay tuned for more Tomaterific content from Operation Tomatometer on Apple Podcasts. Make sure to rate us 5 stars, please. And be sure to check out the Classics Instagram and TikTok page at THHS Classic. See cool projects we're working on.
And stay tuned for some big changes coming to Operation Tomatometer. We won't say anything about it right now, but you'll see soon,
Big
everyone.
things are coming.
Thanks for watching. See you all next week.
Bye.
Bye.